Welcome back, Leveling Up Nation. It is your host, Brigham Blackham. I'm so stoked to be here today. We're going to be talking about healing conversations, and who better than with a handful of my co-authors from the Heal to Be Healed #2 book, It's Time to Thrive. And this is going to be such a wonderful conversation. We've got multiple talking points for you. We're going to talk about healing. We're going to be talking about forgiveness, talking about loss and burnout, how all of these different things can be healed through your stories, through conversation. And this is going to be one of those things that you may be coming back to multiple times to hear how these frameworks can impact you. So grateful to have all of these wonderful people on today. We're going to bring them up one by one so you can get to know them. And I want you to imagine what it's like from their perspective to not just heal, but to figure out, how does this person really impact me through this conversation? We're going to help you understand why it's so important. We'll start with ladies. So we're going to bring Elizabeth on the stage today. I'm so grateful to have you on. Tell us a little bit about your background and what's your story?
Thank you, Brigham. I'm so excited to be here. A little bit about my background is my story starts 25 years ago when I nearly lost my life after being severely injured in a car accident at the age of 14. I suffered a traumatic brain injury that caused me to lose absolutely everything. I felt empty, I felt unworthy, and
Mm,
I felt like a failure and was ashamed of who I was and thought I did everything wrong.
mm,
It took me years being led by God because it was His voice of hope on my heart that kept me going. One afternoon, I was on my knees, beating my fist on the floor, crying out to him after I had made it back home from hospitals and rehabs, asking him why he did this to me. What did I do to deserve this? And he overwhelmed me in that moment with everything I needed: comfort, love, and peace, and said, I have a plan for you. You can't stop. You have to keep going.
mm,
Long story short, that was the voice of hope that kept me going, because in that moment, it was no longer about me. It was about who he was calling me to help. I got through high school, went on to college, eventually graduated with my degree in occupational therapy, where when I walked into my first patient's room who had suffered a stroke, they were hopeless. They were discouraged. They wanted a way out, and they had the right therapist to guide them. I became that same voice of hope that I prayed God to be on others' hearts for over 12 years. And that's how I got into this, got into speaking and sharing my story and speaking life, because that's what God has been doing through me for more than 13 years.
Oh, wonderful. I'm so excited to dive even more into your story and to hear how storytelling has really helped you improve your own healing process, but be able to help heal other people. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Now we're going to bring up Steve. Go ahead, Steve. Tell us a little bit of your background. How has this story of Heal to Be Healed helped impact you? And I want to hear more of your background. Go ahead.
Well, just a real quick bio. My undergraduate degree was in psychology. I was planning on going to seminary, going into full-time ministry. Senior year in college, I changed courses completely, got into outside sales, but I still had a passion for people and helping.
Mm,
And in the late 80s, I was introduced to uh, the whole concept of personality temperaments, and I started understanding that. I focused heavily on the DISC concept of
mm,
personality temperaments. So I started coaching using that. I was married. I had been married for about a little over 20 years when my trauma really hit me. I was actually coaching one of my clients, and he was dealing with some emotional things related to a
mm.
brand new marriage. He'd been married for about 7 months at this point in time.
Wow.
When I hung up the phone, this is way before Zoom, and I was doing it from home. I hung up the phone, and my wife, unbeknownst to me, had been listening into my side of the conversation. And she says, what right do you have giving advice to somebody about marriage? I can't tell you how long I've been thinking about marriage. You just think we are thinking about divorce. You just think we've got a good marriage.
Mm,
Brigham, that was totally unexpected. I did not see that coming at all. My quick response was, well, 20 plus years of marriage. I mean, I couldn't do the math fast enough. It was actually 22 years. I set out on a mission for the next 2 years to try and figure out what the problem was, resolve things. As a guy, I like fixing things. And to an unfortunate result, we ended up divorcing in 2003. People didn't know why we went through the divorce. Fast forward about 6 years, I had made a commitment I was going to go through a life enrichment program. The odd thing was, now we didn't have any kids. Unfortunately, part of my story is the healing after multiple miscarriages and losses in that way.
Wow.
But I was getting ready to go through this program. She reached out to me. We didn't have any kids, so there was no reason for us to stay in touch. And she reached out for a crazy reason, and we started seeing each other over the next 3 or 4 weeks. The last week that we got together, she invited me to her house for dinner one Thursday night. And I thought, single guy, free food, absolutely.
Yeah.
Game. And while we were sitting in her living room, she said, and I had told her ahead of time, honesty, transparency, truthfulness, the whole 9 yards. I'm not going to deal with anything other than that. And she says, well, you want honesty and transparency? Here goes. While we were married, I had 3 affairs. And she followed up with, wow, that wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. She promptly put her guilt on my shoulders. After 30 minutes of trying to justify and so forth, God took a 2x8, hit me upside the head, and said, it's time you leave. I was furious. Well, the crazy thing about this whole saga, the next night, that Friday night, I was starting this life enrichment program. They asked me a question on Friday night. Steve, tell us about a time that you felt like a victim. I looked at my arm as if I was looking at my watch, and I said, well, that would be about 24 hours ago. And I shared my story. The next morning, they said, Steve, tell us about a time that you felt rejected. I said, well, we're up to about 36 hours now. And then Saturday afternoon, they asked me the question, are you ready to get rid of the pain? And I said, no, I haven't had a chance to process it. One of the gals that I was working closely with asked me a question, Steve, what's your favorite summertime cold beverage? I said, what are you talking about? She says, if you're sitting by a pool, a hot Dallas summer August afternoon, what are you drinking? Are you drinking Coke, sweet tea, lemonade? I said, I'm drinking a Diet Dr. Pepper. Are you happy? And she says, yeah, every time you take a sip of a Diet Dr. Pepper, it's like you're drinking poison, hoping she dies. Are you ready to get rid of the pain? He was not messing around. That experience took me through the process of understanding even more about forgiveness, which I'd been teaching for 15 years at this point in time. And that reshaped my coaching program and the process that I take people through and help them dig a whole lot deeper into forgiveness. As a result, I have been able to help hundreds of people deal with the whole process of forgiveness and get the emotional freedom that they so desire and deserve. So that's beautiful. Just a real quick little snippet of my story.
Well, thank you so much, Steve. Really excited to dive even further in there. Now I'm going to introduce my good friend, Dr. Randy Lockhart. Go ahead, tell us a little bit of your background, your story, and then we're going to bring everybody back. Go ahead. Oh, you're on mute, so hop on. There you go. Perfect.
Okay. Somewhat similar to Steve, I spent the last multiple years doing some executive coaching with companies. I spent years as a human resources and organizational development manager in the corporate world, and finally I want to hang up on shield or shade rather, and some of that stuff. I work with companies and working with individuals, trying to help them become better at what they did. And I used a lot of stuff for motivational factors. And one of my favorites was a guy by the name of Dennis Bird, which I don't know if you're familiar with him or not, but he wrote a book called Rise and Walk, the Dennis Bird story. Dennis was a linebacker for the New York Jets and broke his neck in a football game. And the whole story is how he overcame a lot of obstacles and learned how to walk again. And unfortunately, he was killed several years ago in an automobile accident. but I read his story, was so impressed with it that I used a lot of his sayings to with individuals well, follow this or look at this, not realizing that I was actually looking in a mirror, that I would have to apply those same concepts someday. So I'd had a neck injury several years ago, and it just kept getting worse. And so I finally was talked into getting a neck fusion. So I walked into the surgical center for the neck fusion after a lot of thought and semi prayer, and that's where I made a mistake, is I didn't fully engage God. I did sort of, but while I was in there, the surgeon made a boo-boo and caused a spinal cord injury, which left me totally paralyzed. I spent the next day in an 8-hour surgery. My wife is an MRI tech, and she saw the slides, and I don't remember this, but she basically said, if you want to ever walk again, you're going to have this surgery, and it's not going to be an easy one. So they put me in and spent the first 4 hours going in through the front, trying to repair where the first surgeon messed up. And then they turned me over and removed 3 vertebrae from my back and put in 2 metal rods. And when they finished, the doctor came out and told my family, so I wasn't there mentally, that they'd done everything they could. It was out of their hands, but they didn't give me a whole lot of hope of ever setting up in bed, let alone getting out of it. And said, quite frankly, they're very shocked that I even remained alive, because had the injury been just even slightly higher, I would have either died or I would definitely be in bed and on a ventilator for the remainder of my life. So when I finally came out of the anesthesiology, I could blink my eyes, I could chew, I could swallow, I could move my left index finger, and that was it. I could not turn my head, I couldn't lift an arm, nothing. And I could breathe on my own. So I spent 19 days in intensive care, and then I spent 3 weeks in a step-down rehab hospital. And then I spent the next almost 7 months in another rehab hospital, where they kept telling me, you're not, we've got to teach you how to live the way you are now. And they set me down. They finally got me where I could operate a motorized wheelchair, and I hated it. And they would set me down at a table with videos of the fun things you can do with a wheelchair. And I finally got angry, and I broke the laptop. And I said, get this away from me, because I'm not going to need it. I am going to walk. And they smiled and said, sure you are, but we have to work with you and teach you how to live with what you've got now. And I said, forget it. Either teach me how to walk or get me out of here. So we started working on some things, and my beautiful, lovely wife, I held onto her arm, and I literally walked out of the rehab center when I was discharged. So I've spent the last 2 years, I guess, working diligently to try and regain part of my life. I've learned how to drive again. I have to use special pedals. I am back at the university teaching part-time courses, and I've gotten my part of my business consulting practice back, and I'm getting cases referred to me again by the courts for domestic violence and anger management. And I'm starting to work with some people to teach them how to overcome difficulties. Wow. And so that's been a major factor for me. And kind of like what Steve and Elizabeth said, I've had to also learn to forgive, because one of the things that I had to do for my own peace of mind was to forgive the surgeon who initially screwed my neck up and messed me up totally. So it's cost me a lot in life. And but as my wife tells me, and every time I see a new doctor, they sit down with me and say, after reading your chart, there's no way you should be able to do what you're doing. And my wife reminds me that there are people that were hurt far less seriously than me that cannot do half of what I can do. So be thankful and be grateful, of which I am. I'm a very blessed man, Brigham.
Very blessed. I'm so excited to have you on the call today. Thank you so much. Now, Elizabeth, Steve, Dr. Randy, we are going to have a great conversation. Let's frame this up first about what it means to heal. Let me cue this up because this is one of my favorite words. I actually brought it up in my version of the Heal to be Healed story. 痊愈 is a Mandarin word, and at the very top of it, it has sickness, and the bottom section is 全, which means whole. For you to become whole, mentally, physically, spiritually, in whatever element to heal, you have to remove the sickness. Otherwise, it covers you. And I think this is such an interesting concept. I wanted to see, what are your thoughts on this? Do you have to remove all that sickness in yourself before you can forgive? What is it that this idea pops into your head? What does healing mean to you? That's the kind of stuff I want to hear about. If you have one, go ahead and raise your hand. I'll pop you up. Yeah, go ahead. Dr. Randy.
Oh, I had to forgive before I could get on with the healing myself, because that kept blocking me out, because I kept just being very angry. So I had to get that anger out to make room for allowing positive stuff to come in.
Absolutely. What about you, Steve? What's your take on forgiveness? I know this is a huge part of your practice.
Probably the number one thing is you have to identify the pain. You have to identify the source of that pain. And is it a parent? Is it a sibling? Is it a surgeon? Is it a spouse or ex-spouse? I mean, who did this dastardly deed? And once you identify that, then you have to go deeper and identify this specific act or event that took place. Once you've done that, then you can start truly forgiving people. And a lot of people think that forgiveness gives people an excuse. It lets them off the hook. And it in no way does it do that. And forgiveness is for you. It helps you heal. And please understand, this is not political in any way, shape, or form. But this past Sunday, I watched Erica Kirk stand in front of 100,000 people and broadcast to millions of people worldwide. And she forgave the guy that killed her husband. Wow. That's for her. But the emotion that was brought out of that, I guarantee there are people that were in that crowd physically as well as online that saw, I've got to forgive. If she can forgive that guy, there's something that somebody's done to me I have to forgive them for. So that helped in the healing process for her and for the nation.
Beautiful. Now, Elizabeth, I want to hear your take on forgiveness. Why is this such an important part of healing?
So I'm going to do a little bit of a different spin on it.
That's great.
So for me, when I was on my knees asking God why he did this to me, I was blaming him. But when he overcame me with the comfort and the love and the peace, everything that I needed in that moment, it was no longer about my own circumstances. I forgave the guy who ran the stop sign and hit our vehicle in that moment. I never blamed him. I was done blaming God. I had to believe. I had a mustard seed of faith, and I had to begin to believe in that bigger picture. God gave me a vision as that 14-year-old broken girl shattered in a million pieces on my bedroom floor. And the vision was blurry, but I knew if I kept going, I knew that I would figure it out. I just had to keep pushing forward, keep putting one foot in front of the other, because there were people that were broken and hurting that killed me more than I was already broken. And I couldn't bear the thought of that. That's what kept me going. That belief, that believing in a greater plan. And now, today, I stand fully in my miracle power through God's authority, able to speak to this. And what I've been helping my patients and my clients do for 13 years is something that I was told that would never happen.
Beautiful. When I think of forgiveness, thank you so much for bringing that up. It comes down to recognizing that if you don't forgive, it's like drinking poison and expecting somebody else to die. Every single time that we forgive, it feels like a physical weight is lifted off our shoulders.
Yes.
For me, when I think of this, it comes down to sin is just taking us farther away from God. And when we forgive, that is one of the things that we're commanded to do, because Christ actually did everything that he did so that we could receive that forgiveness. The debt has already been paid. So if we harbor resentment towards anybody, that's actually not just or merciful. Because Christ lives and he died for our sins, every single one of us have had those sins paid for. And you don't pay twice for a product. That's not fair. So we actually have that obligation, that moral obligation to forgive others. What are some other thoughts on forgiveness? I know some of you guys had some more ideas. I'll let you guys raise a hand really quick. Who wants to go?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Steve.
Brigham, as you're talking just a moment ago, I'm reminded of when I was going through my divorce back in 2003. I'm wandering around in my beautiful, spacious one-bedroom apartment overlooking this magnificent asphalt parking lot. And God confronted me with a reality that I hadn't thought about. He says, what right do you have not forgiving her when I sent my son, my only son, to the cross to die for every one of your sins 2,000 years ago? And that hit me right square between the eyes. I said, I don't have a choice. I have to do it. And that's how my forgiveness started.
Mhm.
But then 6 years later, I'm confronted with the reality of why the divorce took place in the first place. But so I started on this process, but recognizing I don't have the right to hold on to the unforgiveness when God has forgiven me for everything that I've done and will ever do.
Beautiful. Any other thoughts on forgiveness before I move on to this next topic?
I'm totally blown away.
Go ahead, Randy, and then we'll come to
Well,
Elizabeth.
I was talking about Steve. That just, wow.
For sure.
And
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
until you forgive, you're not going to be able to break the chains and find true peace and freedom. Forgiveness is the only way to find what the way you were meant to live in full peace and freedom that God created us all to live in.
Beautiful. This just reminded me of one of my favorite quotes. 生气是拿别人的错误来惩罚自己. In Mandarin, it's anger is punishing yourself for the mistakes of others.
Yeah.
It's such an interesting thing whenever we harbor that resentment, that frustration, when someone did something to harm us, we are almost like stabbing ourselves with that pain over and over by not forgiving. So when we choose to forgive, because it is a choice, we are saying, you know what, I'm going to start this healing process. It doesn't heal overnight. We don't always have instantaneous healings, but it does start that process and it can clean out that wound. So let's go here. I think loss is something that every single one of us have dealt with in multiple ways. In my section, I talk about losing my mother, losing my brother. There are multiple ways that we experience loss. A loved one, it could be a loss of a job. It could be a loss of a spouse through divorce, a loss of some functionality in our body, whatever that loss looks like. We'll start with Elizabeth this time. What does loss mean to you and how do you heal through the loss? Because sometimes we literally will never get all of those things back. Like it's, in my experience, you don't get to choose when somebody leaves. Sometimes people pass away. All of us have experiences where you sometimes just have to process that loss. So go ahead, Elizabeth, share your experience. What does loss mean to you?
Loss, I've dealt with a lot of loss. My father, jobs, losing of myself as that 14-year-old girl. And I spoke earlier this year and I started out with actually losing everything is what allowed me to be able to gain even greater than I ever dreamt possible. Because I lost the identity of the girl I was. I was a singer-songwriter known for my voice. That was who I was. Everyone knew I was going places. When after the accident, when it took me 43 days before I could even speak a whisper, um, learning to walk again, the girl I was gone. But with me being willing to keep putting one foot in front of the other, to learn the strategies to get to the point where I can begin rediscovering who I was, getting down to the heart of who I was created to be. That's what loss over time, as long as you keep putting one foot in front of the other, that is what brings freedom. You have to lose the worldly things to be able to gain greater.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. That's such a great positive way to look at loss. Sometimes we get so stuck on what's happening to us that we don't realize the blessings that are hidden in those painful experiences, and we miss the pain that can become fuel for further growth. So Steve, I want to go to you for a minute. What does loss mean to you? You could touch on multiple aspects, but what does it mean to you?
I don't like it. Nobody does.
I don't know very many people are like, I love loss. Like, no.
Unless it's weight.
Okay.
I love losing weight. Anyway, before I went through the divorce, I used to ask God the question, why? Why me? Why did this happen? Why am I going through this? Why did it, etc. And I was fixated on why, which is a very self-centered way of thinking of things. And God corrected me one day as I'm going through this whole emotional trauma. And he says, stop asking the question, why? And start asking the question, what am I supposed to learn from this? And when I changed that mindset, it changed my perspective on everything. As a result, I recognize now I went through the divorce so I could be more empathetic to my clients that are going through something similar. And, real quick side note. So about 4.5 years ago, I had a loss. It was a pretty significant loss, not as devastating as the two of you. But I jokingly say that I was skydiving to celebrate my 65th birthday when, in fact, I fell off a ladder and I broke my leg, not skydiving. And as I'm sitting there on the ground, I only fell 3 feet, but the way I landed on my left foot, it just snapped my ankle. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, God, I know the pain is going to be there. Please take the pain away. Number 2 is, what am I supposed to learn from this? And then another thing he taught me is, who am I supposed to teach as a result of this? And that, again, that started changing that perspective on things. So when I lose something, maybe there is something that God is protecting me from, or maybe there is something much better for me to look forward to. So when I lose something, okay, why am I losing this? And what do I have to look forward to? And God always reveals, sometimes not right away, but down the road, God reveals why we went through that loss and how it can impact other people in their lives and the things that they are dealing with.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Steve. Wonderful example too, like a skydiving off of a ladder, not the way I usually describe that. So I like that visual, kind of a scary thing to break your leg, but all of us, we will have injuries that are unforeseen. Like I remember my mother-in-law years ago, she slipped on some ice and snapped her ankle. And you're like, it's kind of a ridiculous thing to slip on a little bit of ice in your front yard. And we don't know when injuries will come. We don't know when things are going to have basically our feet sweep out from under us and we have to dust ourselves off and get up. But every single one of us will have to deal with loss at some point. So I want to go to you, Doctor, for just a moment, Dr. Randy, and share with us what your take on loss is. What are some of the ideas that come to your mind?
Well, I lost a lot of my ability to get out. I'm a very energetic, not sit around person. So not being able to go out and do things in the yard, do things in the field. I can't go riding my motorcycle with all my buddies. In fact, my wife barricaded it in the garage so I can look at it, but I can't get to it. I can't go out in my boat and fish. I can't go mix and mingle and take the grandkids out and do things that I used to be able to do with them. So a lot of that is frustrating to me, and not being able to go and just spend time walking around. And when I would go visit companies, that was one of the key things that I would do is they would typically turn me loose and let me just mix and mingle with people. And I could sit down with them and tell them where some of their issues were. So the loss of just being able to have the movement, and then being able to sit down and listen to things that are being talked about and make notes. I can't write anymore. So that's extremely frustrating to me. We go to church. I was always listening to what was being said, and I'd make notes in my Bible. I can't do that now. And they kind of frown on me if I take a tape recorder in and dictate my notes. So, just being able to get out and mix and mingle with people, and some of the things that I used to do in the community. And we head up a Santa program over here where I'm going into my 37th year of doing this, where we take Santa Claus around to nursing homes, hospitals, elementary schools. And I partner with Bell Helicopter, and they furnish me helicopters to do that too. I can't get out and mix and mingle like I used to. I have to sit in a car and watch it all from afar. So a lot of my loss is, those kinds of things. And as much as I've tried to let go of it, it still comes back and haunts me. And I have to sit down and look. Basically, I'll look in the air and say, God, give me the strength. And then I'll look around the room and say, devil, be gone. Quit bothering me, because you're trying to get at me from a different point of view, and I've got to fight that. That's a daily fight.
One of the things I'm hearing while you're going through all this is every single one of us at times, we will have some loss, and we will focus on the things that we can no longer do. And when we focus on what we can't do, that creates low vibrations as far as your story. And a lot of times you create negative meanings based on what you can't do. But if we focus on what we still can do, now you can have the anticipation of, maybe I used to be able to do 100,000 different things. Now I'm like 85,000 things that I can do. Those 15,000 things that I used to be able to do, no longer going to worry about it. I can still do this. And as we get older, I have heard this from my grandparents. There are some things that you just have to get okay with saying, you know what? It was a great memory. I'm glad that I had those experiences. It's not for me anymore. But we can still do some amazing things. I remember there were even times when my mom was passing away. She was paralyzed from the waist down. There were ways that she lit up a room with a smile, with a wry look, with what she could do with her personality. And I think of anytime we are able to brighten somebody else's day, even if that's all that we had capability to do is to give them a smile or to look at them, those are still ways you can add value to somebody's life. Now, in the last few minutes that we have, I want to make sure that we touch on this idea of burnout. This is something that's really important. And I want to make sure, Elizabeth, you get a moment to start this. What does burnout mean in this conversation of healing? And why is it so essential to recognize burnout? Because if you are not able to process some things like this, there's a chance that you're just going to prolong the healing process. Let's go there for a few.
So my first time dealing with burnout, even though I didn't realize at the time it was burnout, was in my recovery after my brain injury, having to relearn how to do everything again, how to learn to accept that my life was never going to be the same as it once was. Burnout is a warning sign.
Yep.
It's a warning. It means, okay, it's like Gandhi, you have to be the change that you want to see in the world. You have to be willing to learn a new way to live, to learn how to reframe those negatives into positives so that you can continue rising above the noise so that you can keep going. What I wrote in my chapter, what I teach from a stage, is my roadmap to resilience framework. And it's learning to reframe so that you can keep rising and you can keep walking, learning to reflect and just keep going to rediscover and then reconnect, because that's when you are going to step into full resilience. And then every challenge, every struggle that you face moving forward, you're going to be stronger and stronger. That builds your confidence. That brings clarity, that builds your courage so that you can learn how to live open to all of life's possibilities and not be afraid to walk through those doors that are open to you, even when you don't know what's on the other side. Like I said, when I was 14, God gave me a big vision. I didn't see it clearly. It was blurry. But now that I see it, every challenge, every struggle, every circumstance that I have overcome has been well worth it. And would I go back and change any part of my life? No. Because that's what's allowed me to step fully into my miracle power that I'm now so very blessed to help others learn how to step into as well.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I think when we are talking about burnout, it comes down to, do we truly have the desire to heal?
Yeah.
And if you have that core desire, it is a white hot burning desire. Just like a character in a story, they're super objective. Is I'm going to get this done. If your biggest and highest best use of your time is I'm going to figure out how to heal, there are people, just like the people on this call, that can help. A lot of times healing doesn't happen in a vacuum. You need mentors. You need to read books. You need to figure out where are the resources for this specific challenge, because there's something crazy here. Like, there are no new ideas. Have you guys ever heard this? There are so many patterns out there. And when you follow mentors that have been there and done that, they've had these healing processes, you can start to recognize patterns and get similar results.
Right.
So Steve, I'm going to go to you for a moment. What is your take on burnout and healing?
Burnout can be avoided.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the biggest challenges that I've seen over the years is I start to slip into burnout, and the people that I've worked with start to slip into burnout when they lose their focus.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have a solid grasp on what your why is, what is your purpose, you can be distracted with shiny objects over here. Okay. And those shiny objects take you away from your purpose. When you have a well-defined purpose, I know exactly where I'm going, and it's so crystal clear, the burnout it can still happen, but it's going to be minimized.
Yes.
So I work with a lot of people in helping them develop their why. What is your why? What is your purpose? What is your mission? What is your vision? And when you understand those things and you stay focused on those things, and you become laser focused on those things, the burnout distraction can be minimized as much as possible. I take people through an exercise when somebody says, I ask them, what's your why? And a guy several years ago, what is your why? He says, well, I need a new car. Okay, why? Because I need a new car. Why? Well, because my car's 10 years old. Okay, is it still running? Yes. Okay. Mechanical issues? No. So why do you need a new car? You just want to spend $30,000, $40,000, $50,000? Well, no. Okay, so why do you need a new car? Well, I can't afford to have my wife stranded on the side of the road. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Long story short, the why was his wife needed a reliable car, needed a larger car because she was carpooling with other kids in the neighborhood and so forth. That became his why. It wasn't, I need a new car. There was nothing emotional attached to it. So when you attach the emotion to your why and your purpose, then your mission and your vision becomes so much more crystal clear, and you can easily overcome the burnout when you're so focused on what your why and your purpose are.
Beautiful. I'm going to go here just for a second for all of my listeners. In my story framework, we talk about what's significant. You translate it for your audience, and what we're talking about is your objective. When you are crystal clear on what you want, your core, like that white hot burning desire, you say, this is why this has to happen. If you have that type of clarity in your storytelling, when you're on stage, it is focused. It's when you are not focused that your story is not resonating and it's not helpful. So thank you for bringing that up. I just wanted to make sure you attach that to that storytelling framework. Now, Randy, what is your take on burnout? And then I'll close it out here.
Well, my focus on burnout is the more I focus on me, the more I burn out.
Yep.
And so I have to kind of piggyback on what Steve said, and that is quit thinking about me, take me out of the picture. It happened. Okay. And there's a movie out called The Shawshank Redemption. I don't know if you've seen it or not. There's a line in it that stays with me, and it's get busy living or get busy dying. And if you can stay busy dying, and that's going to cause you to burn out. Mm-hmm. Or you can get busy living, and people are going to want to be around you. They don't want to be around a Debbie Downer or a woe is me type person. So I try to stay away from that. And when I find myself slipping into it, fortunately, I'm married to the mean Cajun woman, and she'll give me a swift kick in the rear and say, do we need to go alligator hunting again? And that tells me quickly, okay, I'm slipping into the, so I try to focus on not burning out and focus on what do I have? What have I been blessed with? Because there's a lot of people that don't have near the things that I have that aren't injured as badly as I am. So I have to remember to be grateful every day.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I think this conversation has been such a wonderful blessing. I hope all of you that are listening, this is something that you can start to process your grief, your frustrations, your loss. And before you get focused on burnout too much, you figure out, well, how do I have my arrows out? This is one of my favorite concepts. If all of the arrows are pointing towards you, that's kind of a victim mentality. And that's where you start to get more anxiety. I talk about how to overcome stage fright. My book, 3 Reasons Why Stage Fright Costs and Why You Must Fix It. If all of your focus is on you, that's where the anxiety and the frustration comes from. But as soon as you focus your message, your story on your audience, you translate it in such a way that it makes sense to them in their language with their frames of reference. Suddenly your story makes sense and it matters. So I'm so grateful to have all of you on today. Dr. Randy, Steve, Elizabeth, what a wonderful thing. If you guys want to get to know them a little bit better, definitely get the book. It's going to be Heal to be Healed, #2. You'll hear a whole lot more about it the next couple of weeks as we have more of my co-authors. We've got 20 people in this cohort, and we've already had 4 of them so far. So I'm so excited to have you guys have more of an idea of not just how you can heal through these conversations, but multiple tools, multiple perspectives, people that are a little bit different in all these different ways. And it's wonderful. So I'm so grateful for all of you being on today, and stick around for more leveling up, guys. God bless.